back to another episode of Beating Alpha. This is episode 116, and we have a very special guest on this episode. His name is Brian Snow. So a little bit of background of what he's currently working on. Again, Brian comes from a customer service background, including 8 years and an on-site manager at the 18-unit apartment building in Sacramento, California. While working as a part-time property management manager, Brian spent 8 years working for the state of California as a contract manager and strategic planner. Brian's ambition to be a property owner led to a transition out of the state service and into a business development position with the Jade Group Inc. that, of course, you can find on the website, same name. And of course, the link is going to be for that down below. So Brian is planning to source his first multifamily deal in 2021. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit. So Brian's role at Jade Group Inc. is to identify the right client and thus ensure that Jade Group is the right general contractor for your project. So a little bit about what they do and the way they excel in a few things. So again, when it comes to the price, quality, and schedule. So again, for more information, make sure to get in contact with Brian himself or check it out the website. And, again, first of all, it's just a big pleasure to have you on the show, Brian. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite. It's a pleasure to be here.
That's no problem. Happy to connect and happy to do this. Because again, before we started the interview, as I said, like general contractors get picked on for quite a bit. As you said, it's an easy target, right? So for today's show is going to be clarifying that, look, there are really good general contracts in the space and that you can hire and do business with. So first of all, maybe we can kind of go through your personal background and your first journey. That was, 8 years. You were on-site manager for that 18-unit apartment building in Sacramento. So can you talk about like where you've been prior to that and how did you get involved with that position?
Sure. So several people in my family are in the real estate game. I've got a cousin who's retired out of commercial brokerage. He was doing a lot of industrial properties in LA and then Seattle. I've got some family members who are single family residents, landlords. My dad's got a handful of properties in Nevada. So I had some exposure to the idea of being an income property owner or being involved in that business. Kicked around the idea of becoming a real estate agent and decided I didn't really want to be on the retail side. Got more and more interested in the investing side, took that position on site, and there was an offsite leasing office and maintenance and so forth. So I wasn't really doing a lot of the heavy lift day-to-day stuff with leasing, applications and maintenance and whatnot. I was just kind of eyes and ears on site. So I didn't have a lot of pressure to perform daily operations, but I got to kind of look behind the curtain and deal with tenants and then of course, farm out whatever maintenance requests were made or whatever to the maintenance department. So I got enough exposure to it to realize that I didn't want to be a property manager. And decided, okay, I don't really want to be a single family home investor. I want to be a multifamily owner. That's what I want to do. So I started doing some education and reading books and going on to YouTube and different podcasts to try to get some information together for how to do that. I did get a real estate license, but only because I wanted to have that as a tool. And I thought about maybe connecting myself with a broker. But didn't ultimately do that. I had lots of conversations with brokers and just never found the right fit. And working for the state of California, I had a full-time job, 2 young kids, and was trying to moonlight and just never really got enough momentum together to get a transaction going. So back in 2017, I was pretty unhappy sitting in a cubicle all day, not doing what I really wanted to do. And I'm like, I got to get out of here. So I kind of left with my hair on fire without the best plan in place. And scraped for about a year trying to figure out, okay, what do I do now? I don't have a big pile of capital. I have a network, but it's not really solid. It's relationships that I had cultivated over a period of a couple of years, going to local RIA groups and was not talking to those people week in, week out. So I couldn't just call them and say, hey, let's do some business. I wasn't there yet. So I courted my, who was a friend of mine at the time, Kevin Cavanaugh, who's the president of Jade Group on the West Coast. and had worked with him on some projects in the past. I painted one of his rentals at one point, and we had worked on and off together over a period of about 15 years on a couple of small projects, and we're just friends. And I kept pitching him this idea that I could go sell for him on the multifamily renovation side, because I was familiar with that side of the business and I had a pretty decent network and I had people I could reach out to. And for about a year and a half, there was just no opportunity for them to make a hire and put me on payroll. So I finally said, hey, let me just be commission only. Let me go find some work for you. And are you open to that? So I started part-time doing that for Kevin, and eventually over a period of a few months, brought in a contract, and over 8 or 9 months started making a little bit of money and was able to transition to a salary position and started learning the hospitality side of the business at the same time. So now I'm doing like 50-50 multifamily and hospitality business development. And the whole time, the whole reason for the transition out of state service and over into the renovation game was to get the network built more deep and wide, and create more solid relationships, and eventually form some partnerships. So now I'm kind of pushing to where I'm about ready to do some JV stuff, targeting mid next year. I've hired a one-to-one real estate coach, Jerome Myers, who's been a guest on your podcast.
Great.
And finally have the kind of momentum where it feels, oh, okay, yeah, now instead of it being kind of a pipe dream, it's just right around the corner. Feels really good to be in a position to where I could start to make some things happen. I'm also just doing something day to day that I feel much more passionate about, and I'm enjoying a whole lot more than what I was doing before. I learned a lot working for the state, but I wasn't a good fit for that bureaucratic environment. I was always shaking things up and ruffling feathers and trying to get stuff done, and people were not necessarily comfortable with my ambition.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, at least you're being honest. Look, if you feel like it's not the right fit for you, I mean, that's perfectly fine. But I think a lot of people during these times, they don't have that option where they can choose. They're kind of forced to look for different options, besides having a full-time job. So that's kind of scary, but maybe we can talk about that and maybe some different options that they can look for. But if you don't mind me coming back to the point again, to that 8-year, because I don't want to overlook it, because it's been 8 years since you kind of looked, from the side of the property management. So maybe you can point out a few things that property managers do wrong.
Yeah. So the biggest lesson during that period was, you mentioned right off the top that I come from a customer service background. So one of my first jobs was as a waiter in a restaurant. So you get to learn how to people want what they want it right now. And your job is to get it to them as quickly and efficiently as possible. And that doesn't really change no matter what business you're in. As long as you can serve your customer and make them happy, you're going to do okay. So I've carried that across to other customer service positions, working in call centers. And then I started transitioning more to sales a few years down the road, and learning more and more about that. I mean, I've knocked doors, I've worked in outbound call centers, I've sold shoes at Fleet Feet. That was actually a pretty fun retail job for me, doing something that I like to run and cycle and that sort of thing. So that was a great way to learn more about serving customers, getting your product knowledge down, and being about meeting their needs. And unfortunately, my experience over that 8 years was watching a couple of things happen. One was tenants were not the priority. Serving tenants' needs was not the priority. Serving owners' needs was the priority. And unfortunately, there was this level of a lack of accountability, where owners were told whatever people thought would make them happy, whether it was true or not. So there was this sort of facade that gets put up. Everything's fine. It's all fine. Everything's fine. We're not going to acknowledge that there's any problems. We're certainly not going to confront those problems head on. And we're going to put forth a minimal effort to solve any immediate problems, even when the solutions are very simple. And at a certain point, I just couldn't do it anymore, and I quit. And I still lived in the building because I was had been there since 2007. This was around 2015, where there was a situation with we had one washer dryer, one coin-op washer dryer for the building, and it wasn't working. And I had done everything I could to try to get the third-party service provider to fix the machine, and they weren't doing it. And so I took money out of my pocket and bought a dryer and put it in the laundry room and emailed and let everybody know, hey, this is what I've done to solve this problem. And tenants were stopping me in the hallway and going, thank you so much, because they saw the sign that I put up. And, you know, please feed double the amount of quarters into the washing machine to pay for your drying. And this is temporary and we'll get it worked out. And the office absolutely lost it on me. What are you doing? You can't do this. Get the machine out of there right now. And I told them no. I said, no, when you have solved the problem, when we have a working facility, I'll take that machine and get it out of there. But until then, it stays. And they threatened to fire me. And I said, okay, thank you very much. I don't work for you anymore. And good luck solving the problem. You know, and then they charged me to remove the machine and did all kinds of stuff that was just really unbelievable.
Ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's taken ridiculous to the next level right there.
But I mean, that was just their MO. That was how they handled stuff day in, day out. And I'd seen it enough over the 8 years that was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. And I told them, thank you, I'm done, you know, and moved out of there about 2 years later. It was a great location. I didn't want to move really, but I just didn't want to work for them anymore.
Yeah, it does make sense. Okay, so if you don't mind me asking the following question, because again, we kind of talked about the property management and the parts where they kind of mismanage the property. And again, like that was a great example that you gave.
Yeah.
So can you talk about the customer service point, and you know, what do you see like companies, and of course we're going to start talking about the contracting and what you're currently working on, but maybe from kind of still property management side, like what is missing in the businesses? Any tip?
Well, let's see. So very specifically to that situation, responsiveness and communication. And a good internal system of accountability for making sure that when the tenant needs something, that it gets done. They didn't have the best tracking system for maintenance requests and so forth. They were kind of doing it old school, you know, like a notepad next to the phone kind of a thing, which, you know, this day and age, it's crazy to not have just a minimum amount of technology in place to help you keep track of everything that's going on. And aside from that, it was just, I mean, having the right priorities. You know, taking care of their tenants was not their priority, and it was just obvious that was the case. I mean, that's a pretty easy one to fix if you're willing to adjust your business model and your mindset about what's important, and you know, who's paying your bills. To me, it's just the default. It's so hard for me to understand why people wouldn't structure their business in a way that takes care of the person who's writing the rent check every month. But for some reason, keeping owners happy was their priority, and they would do whatever they had to do to keep owners happy, while neglecting everything that would shore up the bottom line of their business. And I lived there for 10 years. They raised my rent once by $50 in 10 years. They're clearly not looking out for the owner's best interest if they're not raising rents to market rates over a 10-year period. And it was just like, why are they not raising my rent? This is insane. And
even you,
yes, I was the on-site manager, but market rent for that place doubled while I was living there over a 10-year period, and they raised my rent by $50. It was just crazy. And I wasn't going to call them and say, hey, why aren't you guys raising my rent? But the whole time I was thinking it, right? I'm reading and educating myself on how to run a property. I'm thinking, this is nuts. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So
there you go. So I'm sure that the company, again, we're not looking to expose the company. We're not going to call out names, but that's
not going to say the name.
That's what happens. I mean, you know, like you get people who are upset about the operations, and again, it's because somebody who's just not paying their attention, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they already have plenty of negative reviews on apartment.com, you know, and all these places. But yeah, so you just have to be, you know, like in communication and have the right customer kind of service in place. That's for sure. So something that I want to talk about still until we're going to arrive to your current position is sales. because I'm sure you sold you sold kind of yourself personally if when it comes to exposing yourself to those type of opportunities like working right now with Jade Group, so and probably you sold yourself to the owner of the company and you said, listen, I can do this thing.
Yeah.
So can you talk about that? Like, is the sales really important to the entire game of business? And I'm sure that answer, whatever they will be valuable for the people who are kind of stuck in that position where there's uncertainty what's going to happen with their personal jobs too.
Sure. I mean, you can't underestimate the importance of sales. And there are different types of profiles for people who can be good at sales. And I don't know if you've ever done any personality testing or any sort of assessments. I don't fit the classic profile of a salesperson.
What is the classic? What is the classic? And what is the classic?
Kind of money motivated, very ambitious, type A, competitive. And I have some of those elements, or I wouldn't be in this game.
We'll do whatever it takes to manipulate people just to get the sale done, right?
I didn't want to put it that way, but yes. Yeah, there is that part of it. Of course, not everybody with that profile that I just mentioned has that. Some of them have scruples, some of them don't. Sometimes really, really good salespeople are extremely manipulative. It's true. The really good ones that have longevity, though, are always going to put their client first and be honest. I mean, if you can't do that, you can't really create a career in any sort of sales business and expect to have longevity. You might be able to make money over the short term, but you're going to blow yourself up eventually, especially this day and age with the internet where people can talk about you online and people can research
just what happened with this 18 Union property and the management, like they're getting exposed right now because you're being on this podcast. So yeah,
hopefully people won't be able to figure it out, but yeah, I'm not trying to throw them under the bus, but that was the reality of it for me. My philosophy about customer service didn't match up with theirs.
Yeah. So sales is very important, right? I mean, would you recommend for people to go and learn this? Like if something is happening with their personal future and they don't know if they're going to work for the company or not, because there's a lot of businesses that says established 1895 and they're closed. So is that something that people should pay attention? Like go and learn sales? Would you recommend that?
Well, yes, although it's kind of a lengthy and complicated answer as to why and how and when to apply that. If you're a technician, you don't necessarily need to have a whole bunch of sales skills in your tool belt. If you're an underwriter, if you do analysis, you're not necessarily going to have a whole lot of front-end sales capability. But if you're gonna raise capital, if you're gonna create relationships with brokers to source deals, if you're gonna go out and this is on the acquisition side, we got to shift over to contracting here. But if you're gonna go out and find clients for your business, you obviously have to have a strong sales skill set. Now, I'm not, as a salesperson, I am not the best technician. I'm more sort of organic and relationship oriented and customer service oriented, consulting oriented, problem solving. Problem solving is one of my big personality traits from some of those tests I mentioned. So I'm not the driven sales, money motivated sales type as much as I am, let me see how I can solve this problem. I'm big on what's called ideation by the Strengths Finder. I think it's a Gallup personality test. I love ideas. I love to solve problems. I like to go out and create solutions, and I'm action oriented. I always want to let's see what happens. Let's do this. Let's try this. Let's do that. I want to be doing rather than sitting back. And I also have a little bit of analyst in me. So I have to straddle that fence between wanting to analyze and then going out and getting motivated. But I'm very hands-on. I want to have conversations with people. What's going on in your business, and where are the stuck points for you? What problems have you had in the past, and how can we move things forward? Now, that's me personally as a salesperson. Jade Group has been in business since 2003 and have done very, very well without me. They're not depending on me necessarily to sustain and grow the business. They have a very solid team of executives and people within the company who have grown it organically from scratch. My boss is an extremely talented salesperson. So I'm kind of an accessory on the business development front. They would do fine without me. However, it's always helpful to have as much marketing and sales oriented activity as you can muster.
Yeah.
So it's a bigger opportunity for me to be involved with this company that's very, very good at what they do than it is for them to hire me on. When they brought me in, I had no experience in hospitality or hotel renovation at all. And I solely came in on the strength of my multifamily knowledge. So it's a good partnership at this point because I've brought in some substantial contracts on the multifamily renovation side. And now I've produced a couple of hospitality contracts, and I'm returning some of the value that they invested in me initially, which was, well, let's just see what happens. So it was a bit more of a risk for them than it was for me. I knew I could do it. I knew it would take a little while.
Yeah.
I knew I had a lot to learn. There was a learning curve on the hospitality front, certainly. And I had never sold a renovation contract to a multifamily owner or management company. That wasn't something that I'd done before. But I had sold enough over the years. I'd had enough sales training that I knew the mechanics of how to generate leads and what it means to prospect, and then how to qualify and ultimately close a lead. For me, the closing is the very last thing and step in that process that has a whole bunch of front end work that comes in front of it. And the more sales experience and training you get, the more you realize that it's not about closing. It's about providing service and creating a relationship with the customer and solving their problems.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you show them, first of all, that they have a problem, and if they agree that they have a problem and you kind of give them the solution, they kind of close themselves. They're going to close themselves if you ask the right questions,
No doubt.
Because that's what it's all about, by providing those. So I love the fact that you're doing that. So, and again, like, shout out to your, to the company boss that you're working for. I mean, for him to give you an opportunity and kind of, so he trusted you. Like, he knew that you have the potential capabilities, to help, the company to expand and to gain more clients. So that's really cool. So, and can you talk about, again, because I'm sure, like, Jade Group, of course, we can talk about that more in detail and the things they do and what differentiates them, besides looking at different contractor, companies. Right. But can you talk about the client sourcing process? Because I'm sure there's part of it that you use through existing network, through all these connections. But is there more like a creative ways that you're sourcing these, potential clients?
So everybody wants the silver bullet for finding new business, right? And the company, we talked a little bit about our website. It's super out of date. It has broken pages on it. Like, digital marketing is not even on the radar of company ownership. So when I came in, I was like, hey, here's this marketing plan that I can put together for us. And here's, I would need this much budget, and here's the types of resources I would need. And here's the potential return that we could probably anticipate. And it'll take a little while to iron out the kinks. And they're like, nope, we're not doing any of that. Pick up the phone, go to networking events, and go find us some clients. So there was zero support with marketing budget, advertising budget, or marketing infrastructure. None. So I've done everything old school grassroots so far. Now, during the last year or so, after kind of being thrown into the fire for the first 6 months and just drinking from a fire hose, I've started to put together a plan to implement some digital marketing and slowly building that up. But I'm basically doing it out of pocket so that I can get proof of concept and then take that to them and go, hey, can you back this with a little bit of budget? Let's scale it a little bit.
That is awesome. I have to give you credit for that, because that's pretty amazing. I mean, you're putting your own money on the line to kind of prove them. Again, what you did with the dryer, same kind of similar story. Right. You're putting your money on the line to, like, look. So that's awesome. I mean, there's not a lot of people who probably will do that. So that is amazing.
It's the only way. I've tried every other way to try to get done. It's the only way to get done. So that's unfortunately a conclusion that I came to after a lot of frustration trying to get some buy-in. Couldn't get it. But the fact is, if I can show that some activity will produce revenue, then it's a no-brainer for ownership. They just don't want to flush money down the toilet on marketing that's not going to give them an ROI.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so let's talk about the Jade Group because that's what we came for. And again, for people who are watching, if you have because they do operate as, again, you mentioned like single family, multifamily, and what else do they provide?
Well, so
service
not so much single family.
Okay, sorry.
If we did a single family project, it would be for an investor who is flipping it. We don't do any, we don't do any owner occupied improvements, or, we don't remodel kitchens and baths unless it's on a vacant property and it's a flip. So we've done a few of those. We don't do very many. It's usually somebody who's pretty close to the company, a friend of a friend. We don't market for that type of work. I'm not out there trying to find that type of opportunity for us. So it's multifamily. It's generally on a pretty substantial scale as far as scope and volume and aggressive.
Is there a minimum number of units that you guys are particularly interested in, or like 4-unit deal will get you going?
It's a little tricky to answer that. So it depends on which market. If it's somewhere close to where we already have a project or we have operations, the requirements for volume are much lower. If we're going to go enter a new market, we've got overhead, and in order to compete with local contractors, we're going to have to see a certain amount of volume in order to make our pricing competitive. We can only pass on so much overhead to the customer before it makes better sense for them to find people locally. So the type of project that we would start in a new market for is typically going to be about 150 units or more. If they're going to do kind of natural turns at maybe 10% turnover per month, we see 15 units a month maybe. And we want to be there for 4 to 6 months in order for us to even walk away with anything in our pocket. Because we do have overhead and we're a general contractor, we're going to put people on site with supervision and the whole 9 yards. Now, if it's local to us, we've done a few here that are 6 units that are here in town, and they're vacant. So we're doing them, you go through, we're ripping it down to the studs. We're doing it all at once, and it's a shorter, more aggressive schedule. We can turn 4 or 5 units a month on a property if it's nearby. And we're not going to just do carpet and paint. We're not going to go in and do just a regular turn. If there's not some value add component or improvements that include maybe countertops and cabinets or some other significant improvement, the scope's just not there. It doesn't make sense. Again, we can't compete with 2 guys in a truck who can go in there and throw down flooring and paint.
Got it. So
get out.
So sorry, I wanted to ask you a question, because again, if you're available for these kind of smaller operators, let's say it's not going to be the 4-unit deal, maybe 10, 15, again, your range kind of the minimum like 150, but like when it comes to making decisions, so for the value add kind of strategies, do you like advise somebody? Because I'm sure they kind of underwrite the property, they already know what they're doing. So do you like advise people if it's a smaller operator, like, oh, I don't think that's going to work for your particular market? Like, how much do you get involved with the value add process?
Sure. Actually, I just had a call last night with a early stage investor who's done some passive investing and is getting ready to do their first acquisition with a partner and kind of run the project themselves. And so we talked about what's our kind of minimum standard for a project. And then basically I coached them through kind of, here's the progression that we see among our customers. They start here, and around this stage in your acquisitions, you're going to want to start talking to us. So we're not always going to be the right contractor for somebody who's just starting out or who's working with smaller properties. But if they plan to scale, then at some point, 2-3 years down the road or 5 years down the road, when they get to the point where they're doing 3 or 4 big deals a year, they're out of state, they can't necessarily be on site to manage subcontractors and whatnot. At some point, they're going to need to outsource that management function to somebody else. Or they're just going to be doing, if you start doing more than say 10 units a month, there aren't that many contractors out there that can do that and stay on schedule. And at some point, if you're going to do 15, 20, 30 units a month, you need to have a contractor that has experience with that and infrastructure in place to support that type of production.
Got it. So let's talk about the Jade Group, and just again, a few things that were mentioned in a bio that makes them different is the price, quality, and the schedule, as you mentioned. So can we just go because again, it's kind of very like high overview of what the company offers. But there's a lot of different contractors, because like yourself, like multifamily space is something that a lot of people are looking at, especially like yourself. Like, I have a lot of multifamily syndicators who come in on the show, and they're talking about some of those are brand new, some of those are established, but it's a kind of very sexy industry. So what will
Right.
make Jade Group like different from the rest of the contractors that some of those syndicators have been talking before?
Sure. So, well, one is our national reach. For the right project, we can go to any market. We'll go where the work is. We have a somewhat of a consistent national pricing structure. So we try to control our prices with supply, where our relationships with vendors and the volume that we do on our purchasing helps us be very, very competitive on that side. So that's something of a differentiator versus a local contractor who might not be doing the type of volume that we are. But when you're talking about price, quality, schedule, price is always primary. Everybody needs a competitive price, and the cheaper, the better. We're not going to be the cheapest contractor out there. You're always going to be able to go shop against us and find somebody to do it cheaper. However, what we want to do is be sort of below the middle, not on the bottom, but kind of low middle on our pricing, to be very, very competitive. We're not going to be the highest, we're not going to be the lowest, but we want to stay very, very tight and competitive so that we can compete against local people. As far as quality, whatever standard is established for that project is the standard that we will maintain throughout the project. And that is something that we developed or is kind of a standard in the hospitality industry, where you go in, you do a couple model rooms, and the brand and the ownership comes through and checks everything off and makes sure that it meets all their criteria. And then that standard is set for the rest of the project. And you'll have people auditing and making sure that you're maintaining that quality through the rest of the project. And we do the same thing with multifamily. We do the first round of units. We make sure that everything is from scope and quality standards is all. If they want to make any adjustments, there's a period during which they can make an adjustment to, well, we don't like that fixture, we need to change this color. But once it's established, our job is to make sure that throughout the year or year and a half or 2 years that we're in those, turning those units, that the quality standard is consistent throughout the term of the project.
Got it.
And then we already talked a little bit about schedule and how being fast is a competitive advantage. But if you want to do 30 units a month, how many contractors can do that, first of all? Second, how many can do it at a competitive price point? And then third, how many can promise to do it? And here's what we talked about in the beginning about contractors getting thrown under the bus a lot. A lot of contractors overpromise and underdeliver, which creates a reputation in the industry that will say whatever we have to say to land a job, and then we'll try to figure it out on the back end. So has the contractor done this type of project before, and what's their track record for successfully completing projects on time? And we could talk about some of the challenges that are beyond people's control, particularly right now with COVID. Getting materials has been challenging, but it's challenging for everybody. You can't say that's our fault when it's a global problem right now.
Oh, yeah.
But we all have to work together to solve that type of problem when it comes up.
Got it. So again, if we're still talking about that, like how big of a delay do you currently facing when it comes to the COVID and not getting all the materials in time? I mean, is there like extended the time very much, or like, are you pretty much almost the same as you used to be before that?
It's gotten a little better now that manufacturers have kind of worked out some of their kinks. But for a while, it was hard to get appliances. I don't know how many people you've talked to in the last 6 months, but appliances were an issue for an extended period of time. On the hospitality side, there's a lot of furniture, fixtures, and equipment, or FF&E, that gets shipped from overseas, and there's been major disruptions to that. So as far as how long it's delayed things, it varies significantly from project to project because of the different scope on different projects. But appliances pushed us back a couple of weeks on a project. It wasn't a major issue, but it definitely slowed the schedule. And you can't rent a unit that doesn't have a dishwasher and a stovetop and a refrigerator in it.
You cannot buy all of these dishwashers and dryers for all these people. I mean, it has to stop.
No. I don't. My pockets aren't that deep, and I wouldn't be able to buy them if I wanted to, right? Because it's a supply issue.
Yeah.
So
that is awesome. Yeah.
You know, on the hospital, it's a little easier on the multifamily side because you don't have to necessarily do a value add improvement to a unit, right? You can re-rent it as is.
Yeah.
So you can just push your schedule a little bit, and it's not
And
super
that's what a lot of syndicators do. They just acquire the deal and they just increase the rents with the same units.
Sure.
And the value add strategy is probably going to be a year or 2 years from now. So who knows? But can you talk about some of the value add strategies? And again, we kind of a little bit spoke about that. But when it comes to kind of technology trends, I mean, have you faced maybe so far in like operated since, like you mentioned, 2003, right? Since that.
Right.
So was there some unusual kind of value add strategies and maybe some difficulties that some of the people faced in the value add process? Maybe, you know, some kind of crazy technical thing, you know, or some kind of advanced stuff that came up. You know, maybe you have some of those stories.
I don't know if I have anything real sexy for you on that front. So 2003 was when we started on the hospitality side.
Mm.
And they were exclusively a hospitality renovator for the first 12 to 15 years. So the last 3-ish years, we've transitioned over into the multifamily realm. And the thing about that is we're not making the decisions on what's going to be included in scope. Somebody's coming to us and said, this is what we want. And then we do it for them. So
when do you say no? When, because I know, like you guys, like if you say yes, we're gonna do it. So when can you give us example when you're gonna say no, we cannot do that?
That's a good question. Let's see. So
something again from a technology side, maybe something too advanced, like to put in, like no, we're not up to date. What's happening in that like technology side? Because there is a lot of, and that's why I wanted to ask you, because they're like with the Alexa and you know, like everything is getting smart these days. So maybe you have,
you know, that type of decision usually is sort of self-selective based on cost. So we won't tell somebody no, because there's always a way to do it. Our job is to build it, right? And it's just a matter of how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take, and whether or not the customer has the wherewithal to see their vision come to reality. So a lot of those conversations on the front end of a project, I will disqualify a project because of which market it's in, whether or not the client has experience with that type of project or not. The best friend I have in the marketplace is people who've been down a renovation path with either the wrong contractor or trying to do it themselves. And they've done it 2 or 3 times. And the first time they can go, well, it didn't work very well this time because blah, blah, blah. But after the second or third one, they're like, nope, these are inherent problems that come up on this type of project. And I need to find somebody who knows what they're doing or who has the time to manage this project for me because I can't do it anymore. So we love it when people get beat up in the marketplace through experience, because then when they come to us, they see the value of what we're offering in the built-in management structure, the supply infrastructure, et cetera. So I don't really tell a lot of people no. The projects kind of self-select. And what happens next is once we've decided that they want us to cost their project or budget for their project or bid their project, if their expectations are realistic or if they have experience with how much things should cost, it's pretty easy for us to work together at that point, putting together a contract that will work for everybody. And then there are a lot of clients that come to us with no necessarily comprehension of how much things cost. And they may have been told that they can get it done for $250K and it's going to cost $750K. And, you know, sometimes there's a 2 to 3 times multiple on what things actually cost. And that's not price gouging or us inflating our margins or doing anything crazy with our pricing. That's just how much we're building stuff right now for, you know, that's how much we're charging clients on projects right now. That's what it costs to get it done. So the biggest factor is expectations, clients' expectations. Again, if they have the money, they got unlimited funds. If they have no budget restrictions, we can make anything happen. I'm having a lot of conversations with vendors in the marketplace right now who are technology focused and trying to learn as much as I can as that sort of implementation becomes more and more popular with keyless entries and you know, introductions of different types of technological amenities. So I want to have some knowledge of that so that I can refer clients out when they ask questions about it. But I don't have to be the expert, because we've got vendors and third parties that know a whole lot more about that than I do, and always will. They'll have more time to stay ahead of that curve than I will.
Gotcha. Okay. So kind of short question and hoping for a short answer. What was the biggest project that you guys accomplished so far?
On the multifamily side?
Anything. Hospitality, multifamily, could be both.
So in the company's history, at one point we were in, I think it was 8 states on 22 different projects at one time. Wow. Which is, for a company our size, that's a lot. Now I wasn't there at the time, and those were all hospitality projects, but more recently we're doing, contracts that I've created for the company are 584 units in South Bend, Indiana. And we're turning, depending on the time of year, 15 to 25 units a month there. We've got upwards of 1,200 units on deck in upstate New York on a couple different properties. I think there's 3 or 4 sites for those. So you've got, one of them's like 350 units, another one's 400 or so units. But across that portfolio, there's 1,200 or more units. And we did, at one point, I think we did like 50 in a month over there, and we had a schedule for 70, and then COVID hit. And we're on track to add up to 2,000 units up in that market. That'll be basically going concurrently on multiple sites. So those are ones that I'm directly involved with. The company has done some extraordinary things before I showed up, with hurricane recovery off the coast of Georgia and so forth, putting hotels back in business within a matter of just a couple of months when they've been wiped out, and quick response with established customers and so forth.
That is awesome. I mean, that's a fast kind of turnaround, so can you talk about kind of construction, or maybe the like a pre-project planning, that you guys go, what is the process like? If I'm a multifamily syndicator, and of course the best case scenario for you, I already been talking with multiple companies prior to yourself, or maybe I've been doing some work myself, so I've been involved with that. Like I'm already big enough, but like, what is the process that goes with you? Let's say I'm going to hire you out. Like, what is going to be the process from that point?
So our ideal, the ideal scenario for me, the thing that makes my job the easiest, which rarely happens, but in an ideal situation, somebody comes to me with a plan with all of their design work done. They've got blueprints. They've got all the front end work, product selection. We can always source the product for them, but they have picked out, here's what we want. So we want you to shop equivalents for us. Or they can provide their own product if they want. We can do a labor only situation, but they come to us basically with everything ready. They have a start date. They know how they're going to pay for it. There's a schedule that we can then sometimes improve upon. But if they bring us a project and say, here's what we want, here's all the product that we need included in this project, here's the scope, here's all the plans, here's all the design work. And then from there, we can reverse engineer the most aggressive schedule and the most cost-effective way to do it for them, including sometimes value engineering and saying, well, you might not want to do this instead of this because your architect or your designer got a little crazy here, and that's going to be super expensive. So here are some alternatives that we've found are good solutions for this particular type of situation. And then our ability to source materials very, very cheaply and keep our material costs low so that we can do the job at a reasonable price, still make a profit, and pass a very, very competitive price on to the customer. So that's kind of ideal. Now what we get is anywhere from somebody who has never done it before and wants us to help them understand what they should be looking for and what the steps are to plan a project like this, through to people who've maybe done a couple and they have some of what I mentioned as far as preparation in place. And then I'm helping them create, we do an RFI, or request for information, and say, here's all the things we need. And then they have to go out and talk to whoever is on their team to try to manifest all that stuff for us. And then at some point there's a site inspection and we start a bidding process, and We always encourage them to have 1 or 2 other contractors look at it so they understand that we're where we compete and how our pricing is, and that they're not, you know, flying blindly into a relationship with us where they don't know if they're getting a reasonable deal or not. And so there's a lot of it. There's a lot of preparation, sometimes months and months in advance of us starting a demolition day on a project.
Yeah, but there's a lot kind of back and forth going on, and you do kind of quite a bit, you know, of this kind of advisory and, you know, giving options and, you know, because it just makes the entire thing more kind of communication instead of, yeah, we're gonna take it and whatever, you know, which
Yep.
which is really cool. So would you able to kind of give out for the people like the biggest client that you have, you know, like the name, like somebody that you would like to brag about, like?
Well, on the hotel side, you know, we've been at it a long time. Many or all of the major brands we've worked for. But since we're talking about multifamily, BH Management, people might be familiar with. We're an approved vendor for FPI, although we have yet to do a project for them. That we could talk about that for 10 minutes, talking about the challenge of what it's like to work with different property management companies.
Please.
But let's see. So FPI, we're an approved vendor. I've been chasing work with them for a while now. So if anybody is listening who works at FPI and needs a good contractor, call me. Let's see what we could do. BH, there's a company called Sinatra in New York, Sinatra Management, that we're doing those high volume projects up in upstate New York. Locally here in Sacramento, Sridhar Equities. I mean, not everybody's going to know these companies, but these are a few of the ones that we've been involved with. Nice. And I'm on the phone week in, week out, trying to generate new relationships with investors and property management companies. So only been doing it since basically like February of 2019. So I'm coming into like a year and a half, coming up on 2 years of doing it. So we don't have a huge volume of clients on the multifamily side yet, but we're getting there.
So a lot of Zoom calls, right? A lot of Zoom calls.
A ton. Yeah.
There you go. Good. Awesome. So looking kind of projecting where you guys are going to be in the future, let's talk about this year. Like, what are you planning to close on? Like when it comes to I don't know, the way you measure probably, you know, revenue, like what are you planning to do, or clients, the number, like what are you planning to accomplish until the end of this year?
So end of the year, I've kind of adopted a little bit of a kind of slippery slope mindset that I've written off 2020. Anything that happens between now and the end of the year is gravy. Okay. I mean, I had a bunch of stuff on deck beginning of the year. Some of that fell out. We had projects go on hold. It's just been a mess. Yeah. So my expectations for 2020 have all just been completely set aside, to be perfectly honest.
2021.
Sexy. On the multifamily side, I think the recovery is going to take a little bit longer than it is on the hospitality side. Mm-hmm. There's an interesting thing happening with the potential for properties to change hands in hospitality, where there's going to be a high volume of transactions. Mm-hmm. So we're expecting to be very, very busy on the hospitality side, second to third quarter of next year. And multifamily, there's still a fair amount of caution and hesitancy to take on big capital expenditures right now. So the way I'm looking at the next 90 days or the next 6 months is it's a great time to cultivate relationships. There's not a lot of pressure because nobody's making decisions right now. So I can call and chat people up and talk to people about what's happening and what their plans are. And we can get to know each other a bit right now without there being a whole lot of urgency about let's get into something right this minute. So I'm on the phone. I think this week I've probably made, it's not that many really, maybe 25 to 30 outbound cold calls, but I also have a big list of people to follow up with. So a lot of half my activity during the week is follow up. Yeah. So cold relationships obviously take a lot more time to cultivate than the warm stuff or the stuff that you're following up on. Mm-hmm. And I kind of divide my time about 50-50 on that. my coach that I hired recently told me I should be doing 150 outbound calls a week to cold prospects. I'm like, are you nuts? That's a high volume of outbound stuff. However, it's not unreasonable. I need to probably triple my
Here you
outbound
go.
volume.
Here you go. So it's doable.
Well, 150.
It's a big number, but I mean, if
It's a
it's
big number.
doable, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, towards the end of the year, I want to add at least five new clients on the multifamily side, whether that be an investor or a property management company, one or the other.
Mm-hmm. So
And
again, for the people who are watching, if you're an operator and you're close to where you are, make sure to get in contact with him and make the entire process easier for yourself and for him, because I mean, you're already looking for a contractor and he is already looking for somebody to help. So just make the transaction easier. That's all. But
yeah,
the thing that I wanted to ask you again about hospitality a little bit, because you probably came across a few projects. I kind of want to ask about this project. When people are converting hotels to multifamily deals, have you came across those before?
there's a lot of talk about that lately. I was on a forum in September, a distressed hospitality forum, and there was a lot of conversation about repurposing.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been watching the news for those, and there are some transactions that have already taken place there was one in New York and a few other places where they're going to convert those types of properties. It's not an inexpensive proposition. I think what people are looking at is what's the cost of acquisition versus the cost of renovation, and how much less is it than building from scratch? And if the numbers make sense,
Mm-hmm.
That type of conversion is a totally viable alternative. Another client is doing hotel conversions to assisted living.
Mm-hmm.
So there's student housing opportunities. There's all these different ways that you can repurpose a property, and there's definitely a lot of that on deck and a lot of buzz around those types of projects.
Got it. Yeah. So I'm sure
The other one is hotels. The hotels that have performed recently are the ones with kitchenettes. So extended stay model hotels. Their occupancy is 2 to 3 times higher than your resort style hotels. So there's quite a few hoteliers who are looking at converting their existing hotels to an extended stay model and putting a kitchenette in there.
It's not even converting, just adding, a simple thing, kind of, right? What's the
Depending on what your plumbing and electrical situations are, it can be major. There can be a major expense. But if you're looking at losing your hotel versus retaining your asset by infusing some capital, it might make sense. It's case by case.
Definitely awesome. So again, there's far more, you can probably talk for many more hours again about what you guys are offering. And again, I love the style, the way you provide the business and the service is it's very friendly and very easy to talk with you and understand what you guys are working on, sounds like a great process. So definitely encourage somebody who is watching. And again, I'm not going to influence you on making that decision because you already listen enough to make your own smart decision on that. But I love the fact what you guys are working on, and probably going to transition to doing more things when it comes to again hospitality. And there's a lot of office buildings converted into apartments too. So I'm sure you'll get involved with many more different projects and all over the US and maybe somewhere else. Who knows? But Brian, really appreciate you being today on the show. It's been a great fun to get to know your personal story again through some fun things to remember. And it's been a great fun. So I appreciate you being on.
Thank you, Martinez. I appreciate the opportunity very much.
Thank you. So before we're going to go, guys and girls, just one thing that I wanted to ask you. If you pass along this episode to a friend of yours, best case scenario, if that person is a property operator, owns some multifamily deals, make sure to pass it along and let know about the Brian, about his company and the ways he can add value to your friend's business. So make sure to do that. Again, Brian, I appreciate you being today on episode. And as always, guys and girls, I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.